Hi, this is Heather Jerome from heatherjerome.com and from the Sonatas and Partitas.com. This video is the third video in a three-part series about articulation in early music. Now, if you haven't seen the first two videos, the first one talks about articulation. You think about articulation as speech, how music relates to speech, and how that developed historically. There's actually a really interesting historical background to how that all happened. And the second video talks about it more specifically hands-on and specifically relating to the sonatas and partitas, to the use of the slurs. Now, in this video, I want to address the topic of rhetoric. We could say, as explained in video one, rhetoric is how music speaks. And that's pretty much how I always gravitated towards it, because there is another definition of rhetoric which never made sense to me until very recently, and that is coming directly from the Greeks. The rhetoric is the art of persuasion, the art of making a persuasive argument. And if you listen to people now, people like Nicholas Harnoncourt, who actually has passed away, but he talks about rhetoric in music like romantic music paints and early music speaks. But actually, if you read people like Matheson, who was a friend of Bach's, and actually he came to Bach's defense when Bach was criticized. It seemed like a petty little thing. But the way he defended Bach was that he said that Bach was a serious musician whose music followed the rules of rhetoric. Now, Matheson discusses rhetoric in terms of like a persuasive argument. And a lot of different theorists and philosophers back then did talk about that, and they always had it divided into these 5 points, and they sometimes explained it a little bit differently. But like, for example, here's Matheson's. Point 1, inventio. Point 2, this is all in Latin, disposito. Point 3, elaboratio. Point 4, decoratio. And point 5, executio. And I would read stuff like that and think, how on earth does that translate into music? And recently I read a book which I very highly recommend by Eduardo Fernandez, Understanding Bach for Guitarists but Not Only. And honestly, his chapter on rhetoric in music is worth the price of the book just for that one chapter. And the way he explains those 5 points is, the first point is a thesis. The second point is the elaboration. The third point is presenting a counter-argument. The fourth point is refuting the counter-argument. And the fifth point is like the clincher. And again, you can hear that and say, okay, like, what would that mean? Well, for example, just making up my own little persuasive argument here, I could say, I'm going to prove to you that butter is better than margarine. So that's my thesis. Butter is better than margarine. Because it gives the cows a job and it's a natural food. And the counter argument could be, oh yeah, but margarine is vegan, so that's better. And then refuting the counter argument is, well, maybe it's vegan, but it's not a vegetable. And the clincher is, but butter's natural and it tastes better. So here we have something that we can grab onto, but still, if you think about something like that and try to apply it to music, at least for me, I just couldn't buy it. Until what Fernandez explains is, it's not so much like butter's better, gives the cows a job, and margarine's vegan. Like, that stuff is kind of secondary. The thing to get is, okay, I have my thesis. Butter's better than margarine. You can kind of hear that, and I'll demonstrate it on the guitar. But then the important points are the connecting words. So butter is better than margarine because da-da-da-da-da. And also because blah, 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 blah. And then the counter argument. You'll hear it. There's always something in the music that's like suddenly, ooh, you better watch it. And then refuting the counter argument. There's like a more active discourse. And then the clincher. So I wanted to show that using the double to the Borea from the B minor partita. And for those of you who aren't familiar with it yet, let's just listen to it first. So let's have a look now and see how this relates to a persuasive argument. So first I have my thesis. Kind of a long-winded way of saying butter's better than margarine. But now, because, and also, and now the counter argument. This is like completely different from anything that's been said before. It's like in the middle of all these arpeggios, we have suddenly a full and complete scale plus one note. Beware the butter, it could kill you. I don't think so. Yeah, right. And now the clincher. Butter's a natural food and it tastes better. So there. Okay, so now let's listen to that passage again and see if you don't hear how it sounds like a persuasive discussion. Now, the other area I'd like to explore in this part 3 video of articulation is the concept, the topic of not inégal. I always ask people to send me comments or questions after my videos, and recently I've gotten 2 slightly different ones that I thought were really interestingly juxtaposed. So when I had uploaded that video that I just shared earlier on today, Jonathan wrote, "Your handling of the rhythm with different kinds of inequalities is particularly striking, quite original on the guitar, and I think it really works." Now, time for honest confessions. I hadn't even really consciously decided to use rhythmic inequalities when I was playing that. I was just thinking about exactly what I've been presenting today, how this sounds like a persuasive discussion. And I think just the act of putting it into phrases and feeling it like speech just made that happen. But the other question I got was from Abri, and he said, "Are you going to touch on that tricky subject, not inégal, in your following video? I noticed you used it where you demonstrated the paired slurs." And yeah, when there are paired slurs, especially in the dances, you'll go down, up, or if you're singing it, it'll just be like dun, dun. So that's just a natural place to use not inégal. But the thing is that I've realized with these 2 comments is there are different approaches to not inégal, which probably is why it's so confusing to read about people back then, how they discussed it, because we have the sonata writing, we have the partita writing, and I discussed the sonata writing in the part 1 video, like how it came about with these figures of speech, and then Corelli using the figures of speech in his music, and Bach being born into that culture. But the thing is that by the time Bach is writing his sonatas and partitas, that culture is for very educated, noble folk. And, we hear about the partitas, the dance movement. They're not really meant to be danced to. But the question is, why are they not really meant to be danced to? I mean, if it sounds like a bourrée, why couldn't you dance to it? And the answer is partly because the sonata writing creeps into the partita writing in a way that they could really catch. But also the partita writing would creep into the sonata writing, and in a sense it was like this constant interplay. And so you have like these 2 different kinds of inégal, and one of them is based on the speech rhythms and the other one is based on the dance rhythms. And so with this double to the bourrée, my inégal in that other performance was pretty much based on speech rhythms. But Abri's email made me wonder, like, what would I have done if I had basically based it mostly on dance rhythms, which would be much more like not equal inégals, but like a repeated pattern. It wouldn't have changed so much with every phrase, and it would just be like this more driving forward, like to keep people's feet off the ground. So I wanted to throw that out just to encourage people to think more about inégale, to think about articulation, to think about phrasing, and to just definitely be willing to jump off the high board, try it this way, try it that way, be willing to learn from mistakes. And that way things just progress and move forward. So I hope you found this helpful. As always, let us know what you think at sonatasandpartitas.com. If you'd like to know when new videos are uploaded, just subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications.